All right, welcome back to D-Pod. We're doing another episode of BTS Behind the Staff today, and in the studio we have Biatris and Jeanette. Welcome, guys.
Hello.
Hi.
All right, welcome to the studio. So yeah, we're gonna interview two people once again, and Bia and Jeanette, they're college friends. You know, class of 2019 from UC Berkeley, and you know, Kata and I we ministered to that class, and today we're gonna explore some of their background. Where they got their identity from, and kind of their friendship over the years. So I'm excited to talk with them, but maybe you guys can just start by telling me a little bit about yourselves. Okay, just basic facts, major, what do you do now for a living?
Sure. So let's see. I'm Beatrice. Hello. I'm married to Tofumi. He's the other co-host on this show. What do I do? I studied history and education at Berkeley, and now I'm a history teacher in downtown Chicago.
Nice.
My name is Jeanette. I am married to Nicholas. My major in school was molecular and cellular bio. It's a very, very long major. So I was working at biotech companies and labs for 3 years when I first graduated from college. And then I just transferred, and now I'm a senior technical writer at a software company.
All right. So how are you guys feeling right now?
Tired.
Full day of teaching. Full day of teaching. Okay.
I was feeling a little sleepy today, but I'm happy to be here. Happy to be with DP and Bia.
Yeah. So we're recording this right now, right after their work hours. You know, we're gonna have like a staff work time later, and Kat is downstairs cooking the dinner. But we're upstairs in the studio right now, recording this. So let me start off with this question. All right. So you guys are good friends now.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
So would you have been friends in high school?
No.
Okay, so it seems like that's very clear to you. Why is that? Tell me a little bit about maybe yourselves in high school.
Yeah, I can go off. So in high school, I was very ambitious and a bit scary. Some people might say intimidating.
Yes.
I was not really into building friendships. Like my motto in high school was, I want everyone to know me, but I also want no one to know me. Like to be known, but unknown. And one way I did that was I was friendly to people, talking to people, but I always kept people at a distance. Partially it was just due to my beliefs like in relationships and God and other stuff, which I think we're going to talk about later. But I also like sports a lot. I enjoyed playing the flute, and I don't know.
You were class president.
Oh, that's true. I was class president. I was in student council for 4 years, was vice president, and then president across the years after that.
Wow.
It was a small high school.
I'm very impressed.
You should have done business.
I really enjoyed student council. That was really fun, but I only knew I liked it because it was a small school of 100. So it's one of those, you are voted in not due to popularity, but out of respect. Like, do people think you can actually do the job?
Wow.
So I knew, so each year, try to maintain a reputation of like, yes, I'm not the most likable person, but I will make sure that student council is run well. And I don't mind strongly encouraging people to make sure they do their job.
Some things haven't changed, huh? I'm just kidding.
I smile now.
Yeah. Yes. So, and where did you go to high school?
I went to University High School in Fresno, California. We have a lot of Fresno pride. But before that, I lived in Hong Kong.
Okay, got it. Okay, and then Bia, what about you? What were you like in high school?
I was a jack of all trades. I was very quiet. I was in a lot of social bubbles. I didn't really have one set friend group. Well, basically it was with all like the AP nerds. I spent most of my lunches in like teachers' classrooms and studying and hanging out with the nerds. Let's see what else. Yeah, I was pretty quiet and not athletic at all. Wasn't on student council. I didn't like talking to people. I was just into community service and getting into college. Yeah, pretty academically driven, but socially awkward.
Okay, so then let's talk about your spiritual background before coming into college. So maybe around that time, like what was your spiritual background like? Bia, why don't you just start?
Yeah, so I grew up churched. My mom went into ministry when I was in elementary school. She became a pastor. She does homeless ministry now. And so I just kind of went to church with her. I never kind of doubted that God existed, but because I saw it in my mom, she believed him just so much, and I could see that he took care of our family. But in terms of like personal relationship, I kind of just coasted in high school. Like I went to church on Sunday, but like Monday through Saturday, I just did whatever I wanted, basically. And I had like the pastor's kid mentality where I would help out in like Vacation Bible School and do all that stuff. But I didn't really want any like control over my life in terms, I wanted control over my life. I didn't want God to have any say, or my mom. So I kind of just kept that hidden away from both my mom and God. So yeah, kind of faithful churchgoer, but not really internally wanting anything to do with God. Yeah.
Okay, got it. And so, presumably, your mom took you to church every week, or
every week.
Yeah,
yep.
So, yeah. Okay. And then Jeanette, what about you? You have a pretty different background, right?
Yeah, a little bit. I guess growing up, at the beginning, I did go to church services. I went to international Christian school, so I had Bible studies as a class, chapel every week. So with like the whole shebang until roughly 7th grade. Once I moved to the U.S., gradually during that time, we stopped going to church. I stopped going to youth groups. I went to public school, so no more Bible study. So it was like a kind of like a 180 to a degree. And then when we moved to the U.S., my closest relative, my grandpa, passed away. I've never really experienced a death that actually affected me before. And then that was also the biggest move that I ever had. So I started doubting relationships. Like, are they worth it in the end? If it's so painful to be separated from people. Middle school I was starting to have a lot of questions about this. I couldn't find answers for it. So by the time I hit high school, I started building a lot more apologetics questions and like, can Christianity actually be lived out? And more importantly, is it true? Like, regardless if I like it or not, if it's true, like I have to not necessarily reap the consequences of it, but I have to address it. But if it's a lie, then I don't need to deal with it. So one thing led to another. By the time I was a junior in high school, sophomore year, I had a conversation with my dad about it because like, I love my dad. He's the smart. Well, in my biased head, he's one of the smartest men that I've ever had. Also, one of the most loving men. Well, I'm married now. I can't say that. Sorry. My dad is great. I really love him, and I really respect his opinion. And so I had a conversation about him, of what his views of Jesus were, and one thing led to another, and I became atheist my junior year of high school.
Okay, so that was like an actual decision you made. You were like, oh, there is no God.
Yeah, I remember thinking in my head, I'd rather live in a sad truth than a happy lie. And then it was, I think, my second semester of junior year. It was right in the middle. I was taking APUSH and learning other things. So there was a clear time when I decided to become atheist. But I didn't tell my family that because it's just awkward. And I just didn't want to deal with it. And we were only culturally Christian. So I knew me becoming atheist doesn't change anything with our family.
I see. So you knew effectively, even though like you even like grew up going to Christian school, did they send you to Christian school because they wanted you to learn Christianity, or was it just because that was the one available? Or
no, there's like the international school system is pretty big there. So there's like 10 to 20 different international schools I could have gone to, but they specifically had us go to, my sister and I went to 2 different kinds of Christian schools. I went to a Canadian based, and then my sister went to an American one. And then I eventually joined her school, and that's a school where like Josh Young, Lucas Lamb, and there's one other person that I can't remember.
So some other people from our church, like Josh Young from Chicago.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Like he went
to that school.
He was classmates with my sister.
Oh,
Fun
wow.
fact.
Dope.
Yeah.
Oh, are they the same year?
Yeah, they're same. So
wow,
they're in that school. There's like 60 students per class. So I texted my sister when I moved here. I was like, "Do you remember a guy named Josh?" She's like, "Oh yeah, I totally remember him."
Oh, that's funny.
So yeah,
that's crazy. Wow.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So you had exposure to Christianity, but and you said you started asking these like more apologetics type questions, and so was it that you didn't get like good answers to it, or?
Yeah, I kind of got answers like, I call it blind faith answers. Like,
you just gotta trust.
Yeah, you gotta trust. Like, it's God. Like, how can you like, it's Jesus. He's the Son of God. You just have to believe in it, and it will become true to you. And I'm like, no, we don't apply that any other way in life. So why would I apply it to the most important thing? It just didn't make any sense to me. And my family just grew up very traditional, culturally Christian, like go to Sunday service, like never miss it for whatever reason. So very diligent, but their lives aren't transformed. Maybe that's the easiest way to say it.
Got it. Okay. So with your backgrounds, you guys come into college. So how did that journey to Christ happen for you? Like, maybe Jeanette, you can just continue on from what you were talking about.
Yeah. So although I was in a spiritually very low point in high school, I think now looking back, I was very primed and I was very spiritual hungry by the time I came into college. Because I remember my summer before my freshman year, I said, all right, like I'm a 17-year-old person 17-year-old knowing about divinity, knowing about like the existence of God, like fully doesn't make sense to me. So I was like,
there's a lot more to be discovered.
Yeah, like it just doesn't make sense. So I was like, well, I know I looked at Christianity through my parents' eyes because I grew up with them. Now I want to see it from my own eyes. And then after that, then decide if I really believe it's true or not true. So I wanted to give it one last shot. And then after that, then I was going to make my own path. So that was very clear. So two things happened. One of them was I through actually someone from that school, International Christian School, I had a connection. And then I met Michael Lee. He's class of 2018. He was like coming here and there to Coin Berkeley. I asked, which fellowship do you go to? Can I join or can I go to it? And he's like, oh yeah, we have a welcome student night. There's Korean barbecue. It's actually the exact same one that Nicholas stole Korean barbecue from. But we kind of had different stories. So for me, I saw the flyer and I was like, there's a skit going on. There's an engaging, the flyer specifically said engaging conversation. And then it said Korean barbecue. And then, so I was like, I want to go to the talk, but I don't want to talk to anyone because they're going to try to persuade me just due to like friendships and relationships. And I was already by that point done with that. So I was like, how do I go? I know they're going to have a welcome team. They're going to know everyone. Like that's part of their church. So
you like knew that in advance.
Well, yeah, I grew up going.
She knows the ropes.
I know the drill. So I was like, how do I get the content, but without any people? So I decided since there's a skit, I can't afford to not go to that. So I came 30 to 45 minutes later, came into the back row of, I believe it was Wheeler at the time. And I came right as Pastor Daniel was transitioning onto the stage. So when there's a commotion, I knew I can go in without people noticing me. So I sat in the back row, listened to his, it was engaging conversation. And it was the first time I felt like a Christian turned on their brain when they talked about Christianity, even just looking at a text. And I was also impressed that he was a computer science major and that his wife was a lawyer. I was like, well, these are smart people. There must be a reason why. Like, I don't know the reason why, but there must be a reason why they believe in this so strongly to go into full-time ministry. Even because in their careers, they could have made money. Because growing up, usually people go into seminary school or Christian paths because they can't find other ways to make a profit. So that was my background. So that one was like, whoa, that's really different. So after the talk, they said there's free Korean barbecue. So I left right away and I looked down, saw the rows and tables of food. And I was like, I'm too exposed. I can't do it. And so I just booked it afterwards. So I think Nicholas and I literally just avoided each other.
Wow, that's funny. He came just for the food and you came just for the talk. So
yeah, I came just for the talk. And then very fortunately there was a junior in wind ensemble, so I like networking. So as
told you, should have been business major.
So she was the,
you didn't want to like talk to people socially, but you would network.
All the time.
Okay. Got it.
So I was in the wind ensemble at Berkeley. I'm a flute player. That's one of my passions. And then I wanted to get connected with the principal flute player. So, and it so happened to be, she was a junior at the time, class of 2017, Sally Cho. So I think at the end of the second class, like I walked up to her and said, hi, I'm Jeanette. I'm a freshman. I'm in your flute section and I'm going to be with you this semester. And then after that, she's like, hi, Jeanette. And then so she walked me back to my dorm. We started talking about basketball and like other things. And then we exchanged numbers. And then she invited me out to Sunday service. So I went once and I said, no, these people are way too friendly. I can't take it. And so I didn't go anymore. But then she maintained the relationship with me. And then she asked me if I was down to do something called Course 101, which is like the foundations of Christianity.
Yeah.
And
I feel like literally every staff has mentioned course.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess it's a big part of how a lot of us learn the gospel. So.
Oh yeah, for sure. So for me, I really was very thankful that she asked that, because I think with our previous conversations, I don't think I would have shown any spiritual interest. Like I'm not wanting to go to church, not wanting to go to, I think I went to one Friday Bible study and I really didn't like it because it was too
social,
bubbly. Like they want me to come for the dinner. I'm like, no, can I just go for the content? But they're driving me. So I'm like, I can't do this. But she said, am I down to do 101 course? So we only would do content with each other. And then I had like 10 years of backed up questions and anger toward Christianity.
Dang, yeah.
So I was like, bring it. So we did 6 weeks. We did, I think, per chapter, we talked about it for 2 to 3 hours. I would read the content before then. I was prepared when I went in.
Wow.
So I was really thankful for Sally Cho. Really funny because I was the first person that she did Course 101 with. And then apparently, I found out later that she prayed. She's like, God, please don't give me a quiet person. I can do anything but quiet. And then that's exactly what she got.
Well, God answers prayers. So.
Yeah. So I'm very, very thankful. I would say 80% of my questions were answered, both there's actually answers to my questions. And then, but there's sometimes Sally just said like, I don't know. So certain things like I had issues with was how can I be happy if heaven is real, how can I be happy in heaven with God if I know there's so many of the loved ones that I had growing up that I know for sure in hell? Like how that's a contradictory statement. So I think Sally Cho, and then even I think I asked in a Q&A once with Pastor Daniel, he said, I don't know. And actually that didn't deter me or say that, oh, Christianity isn't true. I really respected that he didn't wrap it up in a bow and just says, oh, just believe.
Yeah.
There's just
some things that are just hard.
Exactly. Yeah. So that just really affirmed to me that Sally Cho, other people in his church really think through their decision, and they don't take it lightly. And so, which also helped me, like while we're doing course 101, like, oh, I shouldn't take this lightly either. And so I think by the end, I came to a point where I knew enough to know that it did happen. Growing up, I did not have issues knowing that I was a wicked person, or there were a lot of things that are messed up with me. So sin I already knew that to be true. And then I needed just to decide, do I want to commit my life to Jesus and want that relationship, or do I want to walk away? And so I became Christian my spring semester of my freshman year.
Wow. Okay.
Wow.
Of your freshman year. Okay. Wow. So yeah, what a journey. Like, so, I mean, what I'm hearing from what you're sharing is, that you were very spiritually hungry. Like you weren't there for the food. You were not there for the fun. Like you want the content. And, like course, like usually people meet like 1 hour per chapter, but you guys are talking like 2-3 hours and answering all your questions and things like that. And I relate a lot with that actually. Cause if you guys know my story, my freshman year, I didn't come to anything but the content too. Like I would come late and stay for the Bible study, and then I would leave right afterward. And then there's this funny story where Oyebolu, who's one of our pastors now, but, he's a couple years older than me. He was like, "Hey DP, like, why don't you like stay afterward and you can hang out with us?" And I was like, "Oh no, I'm good. I'm gonna go back to my dorm and study." And he was like, "You're not gonna study. It's Friday night." And I was judging him. I was like, "I am gonna study. I'm gonna study, and then I'm gonna play all day on Saturday." So, anyways, yeah. So I feel you. Yeah. So I think different people are at different stages, and you needed the content during that time. So, so Bia, how's your story? What does it look like? You're coming to faith, or kind of from your background?
It's funny because like a death in my family too kind of awoken my spiritual hunger a little bit more after from middle school into like high school and then college. And so my sister passed when I was in middle school, and I think the loss of her like really made me afraid of dying. It made me afraid of like, how am I going to face God? Like, I know everyone faces God. That I knew as a kid, but I knew I wasn't a good person. And I knew this whole double thing where I'm going to church on Sunday, but not really like giving God my full like heart. I knew that wasn't good. I didn't know how to fix it. So I had a really like interesting view of like salvation and like atonement and that kind of stuff. So that kind of went me on this interesting quest where I was trying to earn my way into God's favor by trying to do a lot of good things. And then that fell flat in high school. But then in college, I thought, okay, now this is the time to redefine myself. Now I can try to be good. I can only be good, but I can redefine like my identity and who I am. And maybe I'll try this church thing and maybe God will be happy, but maybe I can find my identity elsewhere too. And so I came in to college not super looking for a church. I wanted to keep up the whole Sunday Christian thing, but I didn't really want to like get involved in like a youth group kind of a thing in college. So that wasn't on my radar. But coincidentally, my sister's best friend from high school was a sophomore at UC Berkeley, and she was at Koinonia, our Christian fellowship there. And she's like, "Hey, your mom's a pastor, and you're probably looking for a church." And I was like, "Yeah, I'm looking for a church." you want to come join Coin? And I was like, "What is Coin?" Sure. So I came early in the summer, and my sister's friend Diana, she showed me around campus, and she's like, "Hey, let me exchange numbers, and like I'll give your number to one of the mentors. Maybe she can contact you when we have like stuff for fall. You can come hang out." And I was like, "Okay, sure, whatever." So fall rolls around. And I get invited to this meet and greet at one of our like study spaces in Berkeley. And I walk in and it's like all Asian people. And I was like, I cannot do this.
Wait a minute.
I was like, Diana, you're Mexican. What is going on here? I'm so confused. But everyone was really warm, but I was just so socially anxious that I was like, I can't do this. But I was like, okay, I need to find some kind of church to keep up this whole thing, make my mom happy and not feel like I'm going to be like in trouble with God. So I went to the Sunday services, and same thing, when Pastor Daniel preached, I was like, wow, I actually understand, like he makes the Bible relative to me as a teenager, almost an adult. And I don't feel like I'm being like fed information that's meant for a 30-year-old. Like I can actually connect with it. Like I didn't do that. I didn't have that in church growing up. So I kept coming. But whenever it came to sin, that's where I was like, I don't really want to listen anymore. Like I know I'm a sinner, but I don't really know how to fix it. So I'm just going to kind of tune it out. So then as like the year went on, the semester went on, I kept trying to find like my sense of worth and identity and so many other things. So with school, and then I was really into like the mixed race union club at Berkeley. So I tried to find a home there. I rushed to sorority. And at all this time, the older ones in Berkeley were really like loving on me. Like they were opening up their home to me and trying to get to know me. And the strength of relationships I saw with the older ones versus with like my clubs at school were very different. Whereas my clubs at school, I felt like I had some kind of connection with them, whether racially or academically, but it didn't really feel strong or genuine. But with these girls who were all Korean, whom I had really nothing, like no same background, like nothing in common with them other than like, wow, these people really love Jesus. And I want to love Jesus like that, but like, I don't know how. That was such a stark contrast for me. And so when at the end of my freshman year, like I got invited to go to winter retreat, and after also taking Course 101 with Oyebolu, actually, he taught my like a class from Course 101. I realized like, oh my gosh, okay, I don't think I'm Christian. Like I can't work to earn God's favor, and I'm in trouble. I'm a sinner. I have some issues I need to talk to God about. So with all of those realizations coming into like winter retreat my freshman year, Pastor Ed, the head pastor at our church, he gave this analogy of like Christian life being a pie chart where like my Christian life can't just be a slice of the pie. And I really identified with that. I saw that, okay, yeah, like with clubs, with wanting like romantic relationships, with so many other things in my life, God was just only a slice of the pie, that he didn't really have any say in how I lived any other way of my life, any other area of my life. And so I saw that the wreck I made of it, whether it's like broken relationships or not, or like envying people and not being really genuine with my friendships, I saw that I don't really do a good job in running my life. And so at the end of that retreat, I was like, okay, I see that I really can't do anything to fix my sinfulness. I can't work hard enough. I can't be good enough in terms of doing it on my own. Like I need Jesus. And that like clicked for me at that retreat. And so, yeah, I gave my life to Christ at the winter retreat my freshman year. Yeah.
All right. Wow. So, so you mentioned, you mentioned race a couple times, and then you mentioned walking into the room and it was a bunch of Asians. Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think a lot of people know our history, but, we started as a Korean-speaking Korean church, and then it became a English-speaking Korean church, and then, Asian church. And we're trying to become more multi-ethnic. But Berkeley, because it started that way, like it's still very Asian, right? So how did you... How did you process that?
Overcome that?
Okay, can you just tell us, like, just for fun, like, what was like, was there like a culture shock thing? Like, what was weird?
Yeah. I think it was a culture shock. So I'm Black and Mexican. So I walked into this room and it's a whole bunch of people who were Korean and Chinese. I didn't know that at the time. I was like, everyone's just Asian,
Yeah.
I didn't know the distinction so much. So I think there would be times where we'd be hanging out during Bible study and people are off in the corner speaking Korean or like talking about like Korean like cultural stuff, and I have no idea what's going on.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. Wow. So me and my other friend, who happened to be Korean at the time but didn't really speak Korean, she's super Americanized, we just kind of sit in the corner and judge people. I was like, I don't like this. She's like, I don't like it either. Like, it's so cliquey.
Yeah.
All the Koreans are together.
Right.
But I mean, everyone's awkward and insecure freshman year, so I understand. But I think what really like helped me to snap out of this whole like, oh, I don't belong here, I'm not Korean, I'm not Chinese, like how can I fit in, was like actually a conversation I had with one of my mentors who happened to be Thai. So she didn't quite fit in the whole like typical Asian category of our church either. And she's like, hey, you know what? I also kind of struggled to feel like I like belonged here as a Thai person, but I realized that like, you know, people love me like regardless of what I look like or like my background, and like we really care about you. And so that shouldn't be a deterrent for you, Bia. And I was like, wow, no one's ever spoken to me straight up like that before about something I felt just so insecure about. And as like, even though, yeah, she wasn't Black, like she still felt in some ways like kind of different. And so I could relate with her on that. But the whole aspect of like people really genuinely love me, and like doesn't matter what I look like. I mean, my race is important, but it wasn't the most important thing to them. Like I did feel that. Yeah, like I saw the older sisters, they like took me in, they fed me Korean food, like they fed me American food. Like they really cared about me, even though we didn't have much in common on like the surface level, including like our race. So that really changed things for me.
Yeah. I mean, that's it is a tough transition. I mean, we got to acknowledge that, right? Like immediately the initial instinct is what you felt, which is like, oh, I don't belong, right? And so then I'm really thankful that you got to a place where you could even maybe have some conversations with this mentor and realize, okay, maybe I should give this a chance. Like maybe there's a possibility for me to still belong here, all right? Because, and I think that's because in the world, people do kind of categorize themselves into these buckets, and that's sort of who you're supposed to hang out with. But like in the church, those things are supposed to be gone, right? Like there's neither Jew nor Gentile, right? Like race shouldn't be it. Of course, there was a difficulty even in the early church, which is why Paul writes about it so much, right? So, but
actually brought a lot of comfort.
but you know, like it shouldn't be ideally, right? So I'm thankful that you were able to have that. So let's talk a little bit more about race, right? Because it's kind of, so you guys both, you know, as we were brainstorming topics for this, you guys both brought up how you're mixed race, and that was a kind of a formative for you actually. Like it was sort of an identity forming and kind of as you were trying to figure out who you are, right? Like so maybe Jeanette, can you tell us a little bit about how that played out for you?
Yeah, I can back up a little bit.
And what races you are?
Yes. So I guess I should back up to my parents. So my dad is Caucasian. He's from Fresno, California, and then my mom is from Hong Kong. So she's Chinese, but she's actually half Chinese, half Indonesian, because her mom, so my grandmother, is full Indonesian from Indonesia. But growing up, actually, we can start off where I knew that I was just looking at my parents. I knew that I was Chinese and Caucasian. That was just very clear. And then, but I actually didn't know I was Indonesian until I was like 10. Just because in Hong Kong, certain ethnicities are treated better than others, just more indirectly implying. So I didn't know that I was Indonesian until later, and I even when I found out, I just didn't bother with it. It just wasn't a thing. So I was just Chinese and Caucasian. And then when I moved to the US, because I grew up in China or in Hong Kong, I just considered myself Chinese, never really doubted it. Never really realized that I had like whiter skin or brown hair. And then when I moved to the US, I moved to like a rural area. Like my dad grew up on a farm, so I lived in a farm town, and that was like a big culture shock. Like my
big city Hong Kong to
like I looked it up. I Googled recently. So it currently the town that I moved into is smaller than Urbana-Champaign.
Oh, okay.
So for context, like I think Costco was like an hour away, but I didn't know what Costco was back then. And then my grade school I moved in seventh grade to the US, and then our grade school is in a farm area. Like I would wave to people that are like pulling weeds out of the ground for the different plants and whatnot. That's crazy. And it was 50% Caucasian, 50% Mexican. Before that point, Hong Kong just doesn't have Mexican people. I didn't know what a Mexican was per se. Like I remember coming in, then like I need to be educated, so I watched George Lopez get.
No.
I'm not familiar with the reference, but
George, he's a famous comedian and had a TV show. That's how I learned about it, because I was just so like not culturally aware. And then but because everyone was like either Mexican or Caucasian at my school, I was considered the Chinese person. And then even when I said I was from Hong Kong. I told the smartest kid at that school that I was from Hong Kong, and he said, "Oh, konnichiwa."
Oh no!
I'm like, that's Japan. That's Japan.
No.
So at that point, like, it was funny. But overall, like, I felt like, okay, people don't know like, they don't know my culture. They don't know where I grew up. It's really different from them, so they don't really know me. But that's like okay though. And then I switched schools for high school, and then that's when my identity really started. I started questioning it a lot because over there, the Asian population is a bit higher. There's like Hmong, Korean, Chinese, and whatnot. But then that was the first time I was not accepted by like a quote unquote Asian community because I looked white. And then I was like, wait, but I'm Chinese though. And it's like, but you're white, you're American. I'm like, you're American. You've lived here for like 15 years. So that was like, I was wrestling with like, oh, what am I then? I'm not American, but I'm not Chinese then. So what am I? And then I think at that point, then I really started like fighting. It's like, no, I was born in Hong Kong. I grew up that way. Like I must be. So it started becoming like a little bit of an obsession. Like I wanted to, like I was upset that I had brown hair. I wanted black hair. My sister, I think objectively looks a lot more Chinese than I do. So I was really insecure, and I felt like no matter what I did, I just couldn't look Chinese enough. So it hit the point where for me, it hit like weight. Like I think I just have a German build per se, and my sister did it. Like she has more of a Chinese build. So there's a point where I would like binge, like just not binge. I would throw up food on a daily/weekly basis in order to try to lose weight so then I can look skinnier, so I look more Chinese. But that didn't work out. And then I started going through the yo-yo effect because I love food. So I would like throw it up, but then I would keep eating because I really enjoyed it. I really like dim sum. So there's like that. Anyway, so I was like miserable and I didn't know what to do. I tried to learn Mandarin and Cantonese, but for like 2 to 3 years, studied on my own, but it wasn't working. So I was like, man, I don't know the language. Like I don't have proof. Besides, I just say I'm from there. And then so when high school hit, and I was also having questions about like friendships, relationships and whatnot, I'm like, okay, then no one's going to know me. Like they don't know my background. They're majority American. Like I'm just going to be alone, and I'm okay with that. So that was roughly my racial identity crisis journey.
Okay. Yeah. I mean, there's a lot there. Yeah, maybe we'll resolve that. We'll resolve that after Bia tells hers. Okay. So Bia, how about for you? Like, what was kind of your journey on this?
Yeah. So like I'm Black and Mexican, but so my dad is African American, and my mom is from Mexico, Guadalajara. She came to the States when she was 7, and so I grew up with my mom because my parents are split. And so I look more African American than I do Mexican. My hair is curly, my skin is a little darker. I don't speak Spanish, which is a regret I have. But based on the circumstances growing up, it's just impossible for my mom to teach us. And so I felt really bitter about that. But then also I didn't like looking African American because I associated it too much with my dad and just different like bad experiences I had growing up, and just like the negative way that people view African Americans sadly in this country. And so I wanted to be completely separated from that as much as possible. So as soon as I could start straightening my hair, I straightened my hair. Basically all throughout middle school and high school, to look as Mexican as I possibly could. I listened to music in Spanish, tried to like talk to my mom as much as I could, listen to her radios in Spanish, but I couldn't pick it up. It's kind of hard. I went opposite way and I studied French in high school because I was like, forget it. I'm just going to do something completely different. I studied Spanish in college.
Parlez-vous français?
Yes, oui. Je m'appelle Biatris. Yeah.
Oh, much better than my accent.
I don't remember anything. But yeah. So that was pretty tough. And same with Jeanette. I didn't feel like I fit in any friend group. I hung out with mostly the Hispanic kids. There wasn't a lot of African American kids at my school, and they weren't treated very fairly either. So I just kind of distanced myself from them, which I regret. But yeah, with my Hispanic friends, I didn't feel like I belonged because I couldn't speak the language. So even though I hung out with them, most of my friends were Hispanic or white. Couldn't really feel like I belonged. And so yeah, I also would cover like myself with jackets to make myself lighter because I grew up in the desert, so I tan really quickly. So any way to try to look as light as possible and as Hispanic as possible, that's what I did. So then like coming into college, I looked pretty similar, like straight hair, light skin. And then, it wasn't until like I became Christian that desire to always feel like I needed to justify my Mexicanness. I would carry a picture around of my mom to prove to people I am Mexican. This is my mother. You know, you cannot deny this.
People would say like, "Oh, you're black" or something. So then you had a hard time with that.
I had a hard time with that. Yeah, I feel like, but I'm Mexican too. And like, can you just pick one? No, why do I need to pick one? So it was a tough kind of internal battle where I didn't really feel like I didn't want to choose sides, but I secretly wanted to choose a side. Like really want to be Mexican, but yeah, I'm both. So
yeah, so you know what I'm hearing from both of your stories is there's a little bit of it's a battle to belong, right? Like and you know, because you're multiracial, it's sort of am I part of this group or am I part of this group? And that is one of the ways in which people view themselves, like as a part of a certain ethnic or cultural or racial group. And so, so like, I mean, from what I'm hearing, it sounds like that was hard. So like in college, did anything change? Or, you know, I think you tried joining some groups and things like that. Like, how did that go?
So in college, I joined the Mixed Student Union, MSU, and I tried to find like a solace with other mixed kids. But we're all mixed with different things, so we couldn't really bond on anything, really. So I was like, okay, this is interesting. So then I kind of gave that up, and then I joined a multicultural sorority, trying to find like sisterhood with people of different races and try to like, you know, integrate myself in that way with that community. And I wasn't vibing with it. Wasn't down with the drinking culture, so then I left. So then my only option left was just church. And I was like, everyone's Korean and Chinese, but these people really love me. Like, why? You know? And so, yeah, I think at that, when all other options were exhausted, finally I was like, okay, you know what? Like, these people genuinely care about me. They might not look like me at all, but like, that doesn't seem to bother them. Why is it bothering me? You know? And so I decided to try to fight that a little bit more. I was like, okay, I do belong here. These people really do care about me, and their questions about my hair texture or like my background, like it's not offensive. They just don't know, you know. And so
it's like literal curiosity.
They don't really touch curly hair before, so they were like blowing my curls, and like that's fine. I would get annoyed, but they're just curious. So now it doesn't bother me.
Yeah. I know we were part of that same discussion, but I'm what is it, 2B?
Yeah. 2B. Yeah.
2B. So I'm still learning things. I learned that this past year. So
yeah, there's a hair texture.
I didn't know
chart.
that was a thing. Yeah. So
like
I appreciate you guys teaching me that.
Yes.
So Jeanette, for your story, did that extend out into kind of your identity crisis with race? Did that extend into college at all, or kind of like how did that start resolving for you like later on?
Yeah. Well, simply put, there are a couple of things. So Fresno doesn't have Asian, Korean, Chinese things, period. So just the fact that I moved to Berkeley helped a lot, at least for me personally, because it was
because in that community, in the Berkeley community, there's a lot more Chinese and
there's just Chinese. There's just Chinese people exist,
right?
And I was like, oh, okay, thank you. So like I was able to eat Chinese food again. I was able to like drink boba. So I was like, okay, like this is okay. But then I think similar to Beatrice though, I was trying to find like a community to identify with, but then, and I thought I was going to find that in Berkeley because it's like international. There's like people are open to different things. So I was considering joining the Hong Kong Student Association, but they're too bougie. They're too, it's like the rich Hong Kong kids. And I was like, I'm not going to be able to match that. So I knew if I join even that group, I'm not going to be satisfied. And then I was considering other Asian clubs, but I was like, I'm just going to run into the same thing again because I clearly look white. So I was like, well, let's try other things. So I think one part that particularly helped out was after I became Christian. So, well, I guess I need to back up. So I really had this emotional response. Like, I just miss connecting with people that are like me. And I really wanted to go back to Hong Kong to visit. So like what I mean by that, I guess to back up to be a bit vulnerable is when I first moved to the US, I think I cried every night for 3 months because I just missed Hong Kong. And then I think it reduced to like once a week, then reduced to maybe once a month. And then by the time my senior year of high school hit, maybe it was once every 4 months kind of thing. But I was really bad with my emotions. I think I cried out all of my emotions when I was in high school. So then I became a T in college. Oh, no. I think that's what happened.
A thinker.
Yeah.
A T on the Myers-Briggs.
Oh yeah, T on the Myers-Briggs.
You just started to reject your feelings.
Yeah. I think honestly, if you know Myers-Briggs, I was, I think in middle school I was an INFP. I'm pretty sure I was an INFP.
Wow.
And then I cried my way into an ENTJ.
Oh, wow. Okay.
That's
very different.
That's interesting, yeah.
So, but anyway, so I after I became Christian, I actually did an internship in Hong Kong. And then now looking back, I realized that the people that I interacted with in Hong Kong, the people I connected with the most were not from Hong Kong. Like what I mean by that is I went to I was doing an internship at a Seventh-day Adventist hospital. So I was actually hanging out with the chaplain the whole time, and he was Malaysian. So I literally went with him like from door to door. I did other things too, but most of the time that I cherish during the time was I was with him, and we went door to door just to talk to people about like their issues, where their faith was coming from, how can we pray for you in certain ways, and had just some of the spiritual conversations, other one just comforting conversations, and I got close to people. And then the people in the hospital that I was getting close and connected to, they weren't necessarily Chinese. Like one guy was Indian who had cancer for like 2 years, and I was very thankful to have met him during his last 2 months before he passed away. Or like there's other people that were like that too, that I realized, the people that I feel closer to or I was connecting to were not my race. Ironically in Hong Kong. And then that, I think I didn't know this at the time, but I think internally that made me started priming me to think, race is not the biggest thing. It's actually being Christian and having the same belief is what's going to carry us through our relationships. Because the other people that were Christian at the hospital, they weren't Chinese. I think they were like, Malay. They were, I think, Indonesian and other things too. So that helped prime me for college when I became roommates with Beatrice.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I mean, because, your early kind of childhood memories were from a pretty homogeneous society. Like, I mean, Hong Kong is, there's some diversity, but I mean, it's largely Chinese, right? So and then, and then you went to, California, parts where it wasn't the diversest parts of California either, where it's like a white and Mexican, like you were describing, and things like that. And so then to come to a place like Berkeley where you're kind of exposed to a lot of different cultures, and I think that's one of the benefits actually of going to a school where there's a lot of diversity. You just get to interact with so many cultures, and I think that kind of helps you to understand that, like, at least for me too, like, because I grew up like having a lot of Korean friends through like my parents' network, right, of friends, and so then like I knew how to like relate with fellow Koreans. But then I'm thankful because in my high school was really diverse. So then like a lot of my best friends were, they're white, and they were also Korean and Chinese, but they're Indians and Filipinos, and just kind of the gamut. So I think that kind of opened me up a little bit more. But so I mean, racial identity seems like it was a big part of your kind of your struggle to discover who you are. So just to like wrap this discussion up, like how did becoming a Christian, like how did that resolve this tension for you? Because it sounds like as you guys became Christian, you started to feel like, okay, well, this doesn't have to be the main source of my identity. I mean, it is a part of who I am, but it doesn't have to be the main source. Like how did you process that? Maybe Jeanette, you can start. Yeah,
like I think, where to begin? I think one of them was when I became Christian. So before I was Christian, I was thinking like your identity as what, because I didn't believe that people had souls. I felt like what you see is what you get, like that's it. So that's why I thought like being Chinese, like the values that I grew up with, how I, what I was interested in, compassionate about is because of my upbringing. That's why I was Chinese. But once I became Christian and realized we have souls, I was like, well, actually your identity in your relationships is the most important thing. And then that's just like completely 180 from what I used to believe. So then I was thinking, well, if relationships are the most important thing, that means then that these other superficial things, like what I look like, what I like to do, what I like to eat, or how even my perspective of the world is not that important. And then so I realized like, okay, that means then brothers and sisters in Christ are the most important relationships regardless of anything else. And so that was the beginning of slowly realizing that there are other, like I'm not saying that you should like diss or like ignore like what culture you grew up in, because it creates who you are, but there's definitely more important things out there to consider.
Yeah, what about for you?
I think for me, when I became Christian, like what stood out to me the most was like, I'm a pretty broken person. And then as I got to know more people at our church, I'm like, we're all pretty broken people. And so like that became like the leveling playing field, I guess, so to speak. Like instead of seeing how different I am from other people, like on the outside, like I'm actually more like people than I realize. Like we all struggle with something. And so as I like heard a lot of people just be really vulnerable with me about the things they're struggling with. And then as I was vulnerable with them, like I began to experience a lot being close with people in a way that like just racially being close to people just because we looked like each other, like that it didn't feel like that. It felt a lot deeper and it felt a lot more genuine. Whereas of like, because they could reject me, quote unquote, if I like shared something that was really vulnerable about myself that like maybe they didn't like, but that didn't happen. And so like I felt like these relationships more so like they fully knew me, and it wasn't just like we're friends because I look like you, but like you actually know me as a person. And so as I got to like experience that genuineness of like being fully known and loved, so to speak, like I felt like my identity as an African American and a Mexican woman, like that kind of faded to the background. Like it's still there and it's important. I celebrate my heritage and my culture, but like the fact that I have like these sisters and brothers in Christ who like know me, like that became very much more like, wow, I really value that instead. And God values that, you know, like sharing who I am really with people and experiencing his grace as they get to know who I am. And yeah, even sometimes I joke about it now. I'm like, I forget what I look like when I'm with our church. I just have so much fun, and like we just share things, and we get just to be open and vulnerable and have a lot of fun together. So, in team pictures, I'm like, oh, that's me.
Wait.
No, it's funny. Kat even jokes like, you're so much more Korean than I am. I'm like, oh, I like your food. So, yeah, I think that helped me become just a lot more like okay. Like as a Christian, like we're all at the core, we're all the same. We're all sinners forgiven, and that is something I can rally around.
Yeah. It's I like what you said about how of course there's the differences, and a big part of those differences come. One of the factors is our race, right, and our culture that we grew up with. But like there's so much that unites us, like in the gospel, children of God, you know, people forgiven by the Lord Jesus, and like. If we focus on that, which unifies us, then those other things become much less minor. And then there's like, we don't have to like compete. Like, oh, who has the best culture, or like, you know, like how come like mine's not being expressed or something like that. And instead, actually, I think in some ways, because we're united in the gospel, I get to enjoy other people's cultures more. Like when I have a chance to interact with it or kind of find out more about like, you know, like I love talking to, I feel like actually like when I'm with Eden, sometimes I end up talking about like Korean culture and like Eritrean culture, and kind of it's just interesting. It's like so different, and then there's similarities and things like that. And yeah, so and in my interview with Toph, like he was telling me about Nigerian culture, and there were some similarities between I saw between Korean culture and so it's like interesting. It's just interesting to kind of discover all these different cultures that we believe that God made, right? So it's pretty cool. Okay, so now I'm gonna kind of change topics here. Okay, so because you guys have been friends for a while, so I wanted to just kind of pick your brain about like what that looked like. So just in terms of the development of your guys' relationship. So maybe we can just start with like if you guys had any first impressions of each other, like and how you guys first met. And then like let's just start with that, like first impressions.
Do you want to go or should
I
go
first?
I go. All right. Well, okay. So it's not. Very, very first time I visually saw Bia was when we were getting rides for that one Sunday that I went to. And then afterwards said, not for me. Okay. Was freshman year. And then she had neon green. You had green hair.
Yeah.
She had green hair. She was really shy. And I was like, oh my gosh, this girl. I can't. So that was my first visual impression of her. But then we're probably going to talk about this later. But it was really interesting. We were part of the same fellowship, like Koinonia in college, but then it was I didn't really have much of an opinion about her. Like I just knew she was in the group. We had like 35 sisters on our Coin group, so it was just hard.
There were a lot.
We had a lot of friends.
It was a lot. It was a lot going on. And then she was freshman year. We were both in different life groups.
Yeah.
So I hung out with the people that like I knew my freshman year. And then she hung out with people from her freshman year. So it's not like there was any like angst or anything. It's just we didn't cross paths too much. And then the interesting part was junior year, we decided to become housemates because we wanted to have our apartment be for God's ministry or try to build up the church in that way. So like inviting sisters over or other people over, keeping it open and just wanting that warm like church family environment there.
Yeah.
And then so that was my first time really considering, okay, I'm going to try to be friends with Beatrice.
Okay, so that's when your relationship started to like really develop.
Yeah.
Okay. So Bia, what about you? What were first impressions of Jeanette?
I think it was at a Bible study at one of our ministry houses at Coin House, and Jeanette was standing in this circle with like all these dudes, and she looked so cool and really sporty. Like she just got out of the gym or something, and I was like, I can't. She's just no.
Both of you are like, I can't.
Like, there's no way I'm gonna be friends with her. I'm not sporty and I'm not cool, and she just looks really intense. So I'm gonna go hang out with my other friend and judge people in the corner.
That's funny.
Yeah.
All right, so that's where we started. So then, how would you say you guys got close over the years? Like, how does that friendship build?
Yeah, I think one pivotal moment was we when we first moved in together with our other friends, like we took a bus ride to Target, and we kind of just shared like our backgrounds and our family stories, and we're both pretty honest and vulnerable with each other. I was like, well, I'm gonna live with you, might as well tell you everything about me. So on that bus ride, I got to know her a lot, and I think consequently got to know me too, right? And that was like the first of like, oh, I can be really honest with this person, and she's a really good listener, and like she asks really thoughtful questions. And so as the year or so went on, and like junior year went on, like we realized that like, okay, like we're really different and we think in such different ways. She's very like thinker, I'm very emotional, and so we would butt heads a lot. But I think something about Jeanette that really struck me in college is that she was willing to duke it out with me, and like try to understand what I was thinking, not to like pick my brain, which I thought she was doing. I was like, I'm not an experiment. You can't understand me. But like she genuinely wanted to understand like why I thought the way that I did, and that it forced me to become a lot more, I don't know, thoughtful, introspective. Like, oh, this is why I'm feeling the way I am, and through that, a lot of conflict happened. But we also, because we were committed to like each other and to God, being vulnerable and bringing stuff up and kind of duking it out in our guest room as we sat on the floor and talked about why we were mad at each other. That really brought us together. Yes, I think vulnerability and speaking truth.
Yes.
We're so different.
We love that verse, right? Speaking the truth in love.
Yeah.
And just contending with one another and being willing to sit down and talk. Like that's a way of taking each other seriously, right? Like this relationship matters to me. If we don't talk this out, like our relationship can get cold, right? I don't want that. Let's talk it out, right? Exactly. And so as scary as that can be sometimes, like that's an ingredient that I hear again and again, you know, in terms of people building relationships. So from your perspective, like what were some other things?
Yeah, I mean, well, similarly for me, it was that bus ride it like set the tone for like I think the 2 years that we were living with each other. And then I feel like Beatrice should have more cred on that. Like she was the one that initiated. She just has a lot more compassionate heart than I do. Like her strengths are my weaknesses, and I think she really showed that during that time when like she says, I'm gonna go to Target, do you want to come with me? And I was like, sure. And then she was the one that started sharing about her background, and she was the one that was opening up first. So she was, I think, the first of many things in our friendship. And then I was just like blown away because in high school, I try to be as distant as possible with people, but then she was the opposite. She's like, I just want to get close to you. She didn't know how I was going to respond. Nope. And so she was taking, in a sense, a lot of risks that way, especially since she thought I was intimidating. Like that would have been an awkward Target trip.
Well, poured my life out.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I think
this relationship's over.
Yeah. And it just started. It's great. Yeah. So yeah, I think the fact that she was just so open, and regardless of like our backgrounds, like because we during the conversation we realized, oh, not only our cultural backgrounds are different, our economic backgrounds are different, how we view the world is very different. And then I was like, the only thing that's really holding us together is Christ. Yeah. And because like our duty as sisters in Christ, we're going to sacrifice and love each other regardless of all of these things. So I remember in that conversation mentally, I was like, okay, like I have to shelve all of those other things on the side for now. And I'm just going to love her because she's my sister, because she wanted to live with me, and because we want to grow together. And so that just, I think, just really helped. And then made me just realize there's so, what's it called? I'm trying to figure out how to phrase it. Like, yeah, I think Beatrice taught me how to be open And I think similar to what Beatrice was saying, there's a lot of times where I just confess different sins to her. Like not it could be a mixture of sins that I've committed to her and then needing to reconcile. But then it's also ways that I've hurt other people and I just need another person's like thoughts. Like I'm broken in this way. What should I do? And then she was always there to similarly, like always there to listen, always there to bring in God's word, because she grew up with her mom's a pastor, so she knew a lot of Bible verses. She knew exactly where to bring them up, and then I was just really thankful for that. Of course, I talk to my mentors too, but it's also nice to talk to a peer, someone that I'm living with that really just sees me day in and day out. And I think similar to what Beatrice just said, because we were in many different actions, we loved each other, and it was clear not because that we are similar, but because we're so different. That's why I need to go that extra mile, and that just touched me in different ways. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. So, let me ask this question. How much of your guys' friendship, because, clearly you have a lot of affection and, history together and for each other and respect for each other. And how much of that do you think was built through your chemistry, and how much of that was built through effort? Like if you had to percentage those out.
Chemistry just means
just naturally getting along.
We get along.
Versus like you needed to really put an effort just out of sheer commitment to each other and so to get to the place where you are today. I know it's kind of a hard question,
I got 10%, 90%.
That was that's exactly what
10%,
10%
chemistry, 90%
90%, yeah.
Wow.
We're completely different.
Yeah.
And I think that 10% is we both go to UC Berkeley.
We're mixed race.
And then you said you're Christian.
We're Christian.
Okay, that's interesting. No, I think that's been my experience too in Christian relationships. I think one of the unique things about Christian friendships is that brothers and sisters in the church, you don't get to choose them, right? Like in all other areas of life, you choose your friends, right? Not in the church. Like you're part of a church. Like you get saved, and you're part of a church, and there's other people who are saved around you, and like God says, love those people, right? Like. The disciples didn't choose each other, like nope. Jesus. They said they came around Jesus, and Jesus said, "Hey, as you love each other, people are going to know that you're my disciples," right? So like, yeah, it's really interesting. So then that's why I think for me, I see that as a really beautiful thing when the 90% effort gets put in, and then obviously on top of that is the gospel, right? And the ability to forgive each other again and again, and to point one another to Jesus. And as we all kind of move toward Jesus together, we find ourselves getting closer together. So yeah, Amen. I really see that in your guys' life. So as you think about your college friendships, so maybe not necessarily just with each other, but what's like just can you just tell us like a sweet memory that you have, like a memory that you cherish with your college friends, and why you cherish that?
I think one for me was like when we would have open homes at our house, because like that's what the mentors did for us, having us over, feeding us, and helping us just like become human. So like when we became juniors or seniors, I think it was seniors, like we had the younger sisters over, which just graduated, which is crazy, had them over a lot at our house, and just like the scene of them like crashing on our couch, or like I'm just feeling free to come over whenever and eat our food, and that picture of like doing like ministry together, even though we were stressed out Berkeley students trying to like graduate with really hard majors, like still that picture of getting to sacrifice for the younger ones so that they can feel the same love of God that we felt from our like older sisters at church and our mentors, like that picture really stuck with me. And like I still look back at that time like, wow, I had a lot of zeal back then. Like I want to have that kind of zeal now. I have more money, more resources than I did as a broke college student. So like what are ways I can learn to still love with that kind of zeal? And I think doing ministry together like really brought us close together as like a peer class, but also like I got to catch a vision of this is why my mentors do what they do, getting to see lives transformed and just getting loving people in Jesus' name. And that was a sweet memory I still kind of go back to.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that.
Yeah, I think Vision Trip comes to mind, the Michigan Vision Trip.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that was fun. I was in, I don't know if DP remembers, but I was in your car, and then we named our car Shadowfax.
Oh, yeah, I do remember that.
Yeah.
I think it was it like a black SUV or something?
Something like that.
Yeah.
It was like a blue SUV, but I just wanted a cool name, so Shadowfax.
Yeah.
The horse from Lord of the Rings.
Yeah. I was like, who is the shadow? What is the fax? And then I was like, oh, right. Previous generation, my bad.
I read those.
Yeah. It was good. But yeah, I remember Vision Trip was a really sweet time because I think I told DP this, but I don't know if this is a thing that I normally tell or other people would know. I made it made an internal. I like goals. So my goal was, even though I became Christian, I believe in Jesus. I don't believe in Christians. So one of my commitments was I still don't want to be close to people, so I never wanted to go on an overnight trip unless I had to. So I think until freshman year, sophomore year, junior year, I was pretty successful, like with that goal of not having overnight trips.
Yeah, I remember Jeanette would never come to any of the trips. I was like, so odd. Like,
yeah,
okay.
It was when kind of like Nicholas, when my mind's set on something, it takes a lot to change it. So I don't get FOMO. I don't do those other things. So for that vision trip, I really had to decide what was more important. Was me being comfortable and me following my specific rules because I didn't want to get close to people, or is it trying to reach the lost? And even just it's not like we were like going to Church of Plant right at Michigan. It was just probing and just seeing that and catching vision for it. And so I was more nervous about being with the same the same like 20 people for 5 days than I was actually going to Michigan. But then I found it one of the sweetest memories that I had in college, because day in, day out, it was with the same 20 people where, we're packing things in, talking, having spiritual conversations, trying to talk to different people. And we were all on the same mission together. And then it was a really fun, sweet memories also at night, like after an exhausting day of both eating ice cream and as well as
every day, ice cream, every day, DP.
Yes. The infamous ice cream everyday trip.
Yeah,
yes, that is that trip.
But it was good. We needed the calories because we were walking around a lot. Yeah. So like just meeting other students, getting actually to meet one of our peers, like childhood friends. That was kind of wild. I think we met 2 of them plus his dad. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah.
But I think being on mission together and just having that was one of the times when I realized, oh wow, we're a family. Like this is people that I can see doing everyday life with, trying to minister or love other people continuously. And then that's when I felt like, oh, this could be the group that I can see myself living out Christian life with. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think definitely, I think for a lot of people, those overnight trips, kind of where we have extended time together, and even better if it's on mission together, right? I think those are really, really formative experiences for a lot of us. So, I mean, you brought up, because obviously we were your leaders, me and Kata were your guys' leaders for, I guess for all 4 years, right?
Years,
and then for Jeanette for 3 years,
yeah.
I guess. Yeah. So, any first impressions or kind of memories? This is always like nerve-wracking for me to just give you the mic and just tell whatever story you want.
Oh man,
yeah. About Kata, not about me. So because Nicholas already told you can tell a story about me too, but Nicholas already told the chair one.
Yeah,
so.
that's true. The chair one was quite impressive, I have to say.
Yeah.
Oh, man. Okay. What was it? I think one memory that I have of like both of you guys is like when Kata married you. Like she went from being someone who would like take us out to eat and like give me stuff to like we would go hikes because you wanted to go hiking. And I was like, who is this man? Why are we hiking?
Why are we hiking? Yeah. Oh yeah. I remember taking your class on hikes, and man, there was a lot of resistance from certain people. Certain people were like, this is so long. It's so hot.
They were, okay, looking back on it, they were really fun. And we saw very beautiful things. And we did crazy, like, Yosemite when you try to, help us get over the snow and it was slippery. That was crazy.
Yeah. That was probably dangerous.
I wouldn't know. I wasn't there.
You weren't there because
I don't think you would have wanted
to overnight trips, right?
Yeah. No, but that was a cool memory. Yeah, like getting to it felt like a family. Like getting just to shuttle around like 20 screaming kids. Us
before we had real kids.
Yeah. Plus the little one when she was born.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, it was crazy. Yeah.
I as you can probably tell from this podcast already, I'm a little bit of a scary analyzing kind of person. So old habits die hard. Even sanctification is a process. So my freshman year I became Christian, but I believed in Jesus, I believed in God, and I believed in the Bible, but I didn't I grew up really mistrusting Christians, and are they going to guide me biblically, or are they going to put their own spin on the interpretation? And so because Kata DP, so I didn't know either of you guys, and so when you guys came in, I was in analyzation mode for a year. I was like, let's see what happens for a year, and let's see if they're actually like consistent, or if they like do something weird, or do I actually agree with what they say? Because even though I joined the church, I'm not going to take everything as fact. I want to think about it first, and then if it's true, then there's more credibility when people say things. So I was very pleasantly surprised. It was a good grade.
You passed.
I passed.
I think partially is like their Kat and DP are one of the most honest mentors are very transparent mentors that I've ever seen. Even more transparent than I would say even my parents are, which was very shocking to me. Like just how you guys just open up about your lives, your background, even about your family when you were sharing about like the difficulties with your dad coming back into your life, or let's say Kata with her family stuff and other previous sins that she had to go through. So even like with her, I think for her, her sharing about her own sins and own struggles really struck me, because I was like, she's like 10 years older. So I was like, that's something like, at least now going into the cultural stuff, that I was like, I thought that was forbidden, like to openly share that you messed up or you denied God in certain ways as a Christian. And so when I saw that, I was really thankful, and I was like, oh wait, I want to open up to her. And so in different ways, and so that trust really started forming between me for Kat and DP. And then by the time like close to the end of sophomore year, I was going through as an idol with romance. I was dating someone, and there was a certain point where I knew God was saying don't date him for different reasons, but I was really pushing it aside for like a year. And there was a time, because I was so trusting of Kat and DP, I was like, I know they, regardless of like how dutiful I am, regardless of how I do whatever they want to, like kind of thing, because that was my expectation of Christians, just want you to do things to follow God. But at that point, I saw over 2 semesters that you guys just really loved me because of Jesus, and regardless of what I do, that's not going to change. And so Kata at one point, she didn't challenge, she just brought it up because I brought up a specific question about dating, and then she just probed. And that was enough for me to realize, oh man, she's speaking truth to me. And I was like, can you give me a deadline on when to think about this? And then she said, I like deadlines.
Yeah.
so I was like, can you give me a deadline? She was really nice. And because she didn't say, oh, why do you want a deadline? She's like, how about 6 months? Just think about it for 6 months. And I was like, okay. And then 2 weeks later, I ended up breaking up with the guy, and I texted Kat. I was like, yeah.
I didn't need 6 months.
I didn't need 6 months. I knew.
So I just was really thankful that I had an older mentor that I trusted during that time, and that like, cause I was, after breaking up with the dude, I was a bit of a wreck, but because I had like I had Kat, I had you, I had just like this whole support system to just guide me through that process. I knew I was gonna be okay. So, and I knew that I was in really good hands. So sophomore year, even though I didn't really know you guys for too long, it was just a year, I really leaned on your guys' wisdom and guidance, and that you were spiritually grounded. So
yeah, same.
Wow, thanks for sharing that. Feel slightly like like, well, thank you for not making fun of us.
I mean, Nicholas already said the chair story.
Yeah, that's true,
He stole your thunder.
I know, yeah.
Yeah,
I know. That's always Jeanette's first story about me, so I knew she would say that, but Nicholas got to it first.
Yeah, I mean, I have other things.
Yeah.
And I think,
but we're gonna end the podcast right here.
That's for a later day.
Yeah. That's funny. So to end, why? Do you guys have any questions for me? Like, we're running a little long on time, but I think we have time for maybe 1, maybe 2, depending on the question. So.
Because you guys are so transparent the past years.
Yeah,
it's really hard.
Your lives are very open.
I guess. Well, one related to this podcast. I mean, since we're talking about race and whatnot. So as you said, like, Grace Point has been a Korean church majority. So when you were in college, it was mostly Korean and Chinese people. Yeah. So it was pretty chillin'. And then slowly transitioned to Asian, slowly transitioned to other things. And I think since we were with you, like, it was slowly becoming more diverse, but especially even more so in Chicago. So how, I guess for you culturally you are Korean, but at least in college you lean toward more of the American route, and the same thing with Kata. So like, how was, like, I don't know, maybe balancing that? Because this is a lot of our students are either African American or from Africa. So that's and I think only like 2 people, like Chathu and Lauren, are Korean. So that's like the opposite of what you grew up with in college. So maybe how is that? Yeah,
that's it's something that I don't know if I've thought about it a lot. But I'll start with this. Like, I actually think that if our church wasn't an Asian church when I was in college, I don't think I would have come to our church, and because that's where I was at. So I in the church scene. So I had again like a pretty diverse group of friends in school, but in church, like I grew up going to Korean church, and that's what I knew. Like it was a Korean-speaking Korean church, and I was part of the English-speaking youth group. So, so I think when I was looking for a church, I was looking for something similar to that experience. And so I think part of the reason I came to our church, and so I mean, for me, I stayed because of Pastor Ed's messages. So that was the big thing. But then I think my small group, I felt very, I guess you could say it was an easy transition because my small group my class happened to be like mostly Korean. It was kind of an anomaly actually, because I think at that time it was a lot of Chinese, at Grace Point Berkeley. But yeah. So anyways, I think that helped me with my transition. So, but I think I've never really really embraced Koreanness as like a strong identity of mine. I think, and I've had to work through it because I think there were aspects of Korean culture that I didn't really like, and so that's probably a story for another time. But I think. But I've come to peace with it since then. I appreciate different aspects of my culture, my upbringing, and but I think over the years I've developed a strong conviction that like the church should not be bound by race and ethnicity and the whole Jew and Gentile thing, right? It comes from that, and so for me, I'm personally super thankful that we have like African American, African brothers and sisters in the Chicago church, and I think that's something I've been trying to be mindful of. I remember having a conversation with the staff last year saying like, hey, like we're so used to serving Asian food at our church because like we all came from Berkeley and like a lot of people are Asian and like we just take that for granted. But like, I don't know if we should do that anymore for our large group. Like for Sunday services, for Bible studies, let's not serve Asian food because most of the students who are coming are not Asian. And actually like I could see that even being an unwelcoming thing. Like not that it has to be per se, but like, I don't know, like, if you come in and you smell like food that you've never smelled before, that's not, you know what I mean? It's like not welcoming, right? So, So, and that might put up an unnecessary barrier, or it might send a message that I'm not intending to communicate, right? And so then we made that decision to say, hey, okay, like let's just stick with American food, right? Like let's stick with American food, and then so, but then if people come to our place, I mean, we serve Korean food all the time at our place, right? Because I mean, they're coming into our household, and so that's different. And we and when we invite them in, hey, we'll make you some Korean food, and we try not to make something like too smelly, like something a little bit more palatable for most people, right? And have a non-spicy option since so many things are spicy. So, but yeah, for me, like I've kind of mentioned before, I really appreciate kind of getting to know people from different cultures and kind of how that's affected their upbringing and who they are. And I think I have much more learning to do. I think we're kind of figuring out how to do this, right? And obviously like the older ones at our church, like we're all Asian because like we came from that period where things were pretty Asian. But I think church-wide, when you look at kind of Grace Point network-wide, I mean, that's diverse. Definitely been shifting. And so we're not the only church that, has maybe like a majority actually, Black or kind of minority, like including like Hispanic. And I see that when I visit churches now, like that's the case in a lot of the churches actually that are outside of California.
Yeah, especially East Coast. I remember
East Coast.
There's an all like church retreat, and I was like, whoa, wow, we diversified, didn't we?
Yay.
So frankly, I find it really exciting. And I think that there's going to be things we have to learn and things we have to get better at. And the way we're going to do that is by speaking truth to each other and kind of learning from each other, and we'll kind of figure out how to best love each other, through that. So, all right. Well, I think that's it. For today. So it's a long episode, but I think it was a really, really interesting discussion. So thank you guys for coming on today.
Yeah, thank you, DP.
All right. Well, as usual, if you have any questions, any suggestions for the future, you can leave it on the bit.ly link. We'll leave it in the show notes. And hope you enjoyed our discussion with Bia and Jeanette today. All right. Thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.